Testing, testing, testing. JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. Friday, May 9th, 9 a.m. on this fine morning. Talk really quick about the market. Some names I'm looking at go from there. S&P futures up about 0.3% here. Back to back gap higher sessions. Uh, Good way to end the week. S&P is down 0.3% on a week. So hopefully, markets can hold their ground here and a green week, right? Would be pretty impressive stuff. But either way, talk about some of the names I'm looking at. Go from there. So yesterday we had the announcement. So on the watch list yesterday morning, I was a little concerned about the sell the news or maybe some disappointment in this supposed UK US trade deal. And then the markets opened higher and then gave back the gap. And it was that press conference was supposed to be at 10, and it was 10:15, and it was 10:30, and 10:40, and then it finally happened at 11 o'clock. And the market just sold off into that event. So thankfully, got to sell the news before the news. And then once the announcement came out, it was like, to me, like vague, right? Just the autos, first couple 100,000 autos exempt, still a blanket 10% tariffs. The U.S. is going to be able exports on some beef going down. Talked about the UK buying Airbus, Boeing planes. It was just kind of like an overview, right? It wasn't very detailed. It was, supposedly there's no agreement signed. It's just, to me, it was like a symbolic, I guess, more than anything else. But what I want, or at least to me, the optimist would be that this is kind of like a framework or blueprint for kind of how things are going to play out. And then there's still the 90-day pause, so hopefully, some more deals come out and just work around that. But the big deal obviously is going to be this weekend. So, futures this morning were looking pretty good. Some of the names that might be impacted by tariffs. Obviously, the Wayfarers, Restaurant Deck, some of these other names were doing great in the pre-market. And then you had POTUS come out saying, oh, an 80% tariff on China sounds just about right, but it's up to Besson. Uh, just, it's like I just made it kind of like a joke, but it's like, oh, pick a number between 0 and 145. Like, what financial economic study has been done to figure out what an 80% tariff on China? Like, it's just like they just threw out the number, right? And who knows what that looks like on the back end, right? Because the tariff technically, it's tax revenue, right? So it's like they're taking money out of the economy for the tax revenue. Then how's it going to get back into so the tax cuts, whatever. Again, not an economist. These are just things that just kind of like give me a little pause because I'm like, hey, I want the U.S. and all the countries to have a great trade partnership, right? Fair. So if that's what the outcome of all this is, as bumpy as it's been, that's a great outcome. But some of the stuff just, it's like you bang your head on the wall. Similarly, like yesterday's trade deal with the US and UK, it's like the UK is like the ninth or 10th trading most in terms of billions of dollars trade partner. So it's not even, Mexico is 5 times more important than the UK. Like I think it's, 700 something billion where the UK is like 140 billion. Vietnam does more trade with the US than the UK. So there's other deals have to be mapped out. But again, it's a first step. I hopefully, and the market's kind of been somewhat receptive, so hopefully that works out. And then this weekend's got to be a big deal. Best case scenario for this weekend's got to be some kind of pause, right? That's whether it be 30 days, whether it be 45, whether it be 90. That, to me, that would be the most ideal, or a flat rate 10% until the things get worked out. Worst case scenario, if there's no deal, and then the future will be down 2% on Monday. I just kind of where I'm aiming. I'm, glass half full kind of person. I think there'll be some kind of positive commentary coming out over the weekend, at least to give a little glimmer of hope, remove some of the uncertainty, and then we can move on from there. Today, 565 to 570, maybe 564 in the SPY. That's kind of would be ideal. Hopefully, a close over 0.3%, so we can be green on the week. It's funny, on Monday, we were coming in 9 sessions in a row to the upside, coming to Monday historic, right? 2004 November, the biggest 9-day rally since then. And then I was talking, hey, possibly 570 this week, consolidation. Unfortunately, that's what happened. Monday, Tuesday, premium crush consolidation, and finally some resumption to the upside. So we'll see what happens here today. Also, so 564 and 570. So that 200-day moving average to me would be a big deal. But I almost want to see it happen next week. Give us some more churn. So that's kind of the overall market. Also, some interesting stats to note, right? So at the highs yesterday, the S&P was up over 18% from its lows at the start of April after the Liberation Day sell-off, right? So another couple percent, and we're back in a bull market. Pretty remarkable stuff. Technically speaking, people won't say it is, but technically speaking, I think we have one of the biggest bear to bull markets in history was with COVID. This will be close if it happens. And then just other things to note, the amount of stock trading over their 50-day moving average, the highest level since December 9th. The trend is your friend, right? And then the VIX. I would love to see the VIX back under 20, but looks like it's going to take a couple more days. All right, so now just individual names. At the start of the week, I had those Decker spec calls, and then I had to wait till Thursday for them to finally pay off. Deck was at like 119 on Wednesday when I was talking in the afternoon after the Fed meeting, and well, right after the Fed pressers, after Powell's presser, and I'm like, maybe 130 this week, and boom, it was almost up to 128 yesterday. Pull back in the afternoon. We had a big last 30-minute sell off from the highs. I pulled down Deck, and then it looks like maybe resumption here today. I was a little more confident in resumption until that 80% tariff on China headline came out, but I still think there's a possibility that breaks over 130 today. They don't report earnings for 2 weeks. So don't be surprised, especially if there's strength today, that I look for some more calls into next week, almost like as a spec lotto. Because if there is a positive, like the best case scenario with a pause or a 90-day pause or 60-day pause, I think deck trades over 140. Call me crazy, but sometimes you gotta be crazy to think like that, and then inexpensive calls become nice multi-baggers. That's deck. Same with RH. This might be the third or fourth week in a row that I might try and do some spec calls on Friday. Had those 220s last week I added. Was able to lock some of those in to cover costs with little profits. And then, of course, we have Monday and Tuesday premium crush. It's right here at 200 in the pre-market. I would not be surprised to see it up to 210 today. Another name I might look to get some strikes in. And also Wayfair. Similarly, I added those strikes last Friday. Locked some in to cover some costs, a little profit. And then, sure enough, premium crush Monday, Tuesday. Now it's back, right? Up near 35. Well, tested 34.90 in the pre-market. I think it trades over 35 today. So the ideal scenario here would be lock. Obviously, well, they expire today, so lock the rest of my calls in for some nice profits. Maybe it gets to 36. That would be ideal. And then maybe look for some later dated strikes there on Wayfair, similar to Deck. Deck 140 on Monday. I think W can be over $40. But the big deal has to be Vietnam. That's a big part of their business. Then just some other names. Trip over 1470, got over $15 in the afternoon. Locked some of the calls in for close to 100% to cover some of the costs in. Expedia reported earnings after the close yesterday. A little blah, right? A little rough on the guidance. So I don't know if that's going to pull Trip down here today, but I still think that's set up for 16 plus. And then you have the backdrop of M&A, right? I mean, back in October, November, it was in the filings. Trip was approached by folks to acquire the company, or at least interest, $18, and they raised it to like 19. So it was at $13 only a couple days ago. Have to think that those suitors might be back. Fiverr, I talked about in the rant yesterday afternoon. It stuck at 30 for like 2 hours yesterday, and then just couldn't break through, and then it pulled back and closed at 29.52. I don't want to see the premiums get crushed, especially if it breaks under 29. I mean, it will kill the 30. So I might look to close my calls out and revisit or add later dated strikes. Goldman Spectacular upgraded the stock price yesterday midday to like $47. Doesn't mean that's where it's headed, but maybe that set things up into next week, especially if the market finds footing. PM, gosh, I mean, I'm watching Monday, Tuesday. It's doing great with all the market churning, and then I finally had the calls on Wednesday, and then yesterday it picks the day after I get the calls, have its worst session in weeks. So disappointing. Still like this for 180. Nothing's changed. There was no downgrade. So I don't know what that was about. And then other names. So, I keep talking about the environment we're in being conducive to kind of using Fridays as an opportunity to be a little more aggressive on some lotto plays. So don't be surprised if I do lottos. Reddit. The Trade Desk had a great quarter yesterday. I'm surprised it's not up more, considering the fall it had. You would think it'd have recouped more of it, but it's sitting here at $68. Don't be surprised I trade some of those for some lottos. Obviously, RH. VKTX and GPCR still have those freebies. In lieu of trying to maybe get some more strikes, I might just hold VKTX, the rest of those into the weekend, and then look next week to sell the rest of my maze and go further out. GPCR, different story. I might look to get some of the Junes. And that's it, folks. Let's have a great day. I'll be back on audio later. Rock and roll.